A report reveals past problems on Speaker Madigan's staff, and a fake gun and a Trump mask cause embarrassment at a Democrat's fundraiser. We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state issues, sometimes federal issues, and how they just might affect your life. I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State Journal-Register. With me here today, Rebecca Anzel of Capital News Illinois. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Sam Dunklau, reporter with NPR Illinois. Welcome back to you, too.
Thanks.
I know you've been doing a lot of these shows. We appreciate it.
Hey, you know what?
So here we are. So Maggie Hickey is a former state inspector general. She put out a 200-page report in the last week talking about allegations of problems on the staff of Speaker Mike Madigan. They talked about problems in particular with the former guy who had very many roles, it turns out, and he was always nice to me, but apparently working for him was a little more challenging for some, according to this 200-page report. Tim Mapes, who had to step down after a staffer on the Democratic side said he had said some inappropriate comments to her, but that's Tim Mapes, and he was clerk of the House, executive director of the Democratic Party of Illinois, which Speaker Madigan also chairs, and was also chief of staff to Speaker Madigan. He is no longer there. 3 people now hold those 3 positions. Speaker Madigan says, clearly there's more for me to do, but what are some of the takeaways from the report on this former Inspector General Maggie Hickey, who was asked to do this by the House Democrats?
So the report basically found that the Speaker's office had this huge culture of bullying. Employees felt like it was a sort of toxic work environment. They felt like they were pressured into doing sort of demeaning jobs or certain tasks that weren't really associated with their job, sort of volunteer work on
Of course,
campaigns.
there's always campaign. I mean, I think everybody on all sides of the political spectrum at the State House for years, you work really hard during the legislative session, then you get onto campaign staff, so you often get off the state payroll, take a leave of absence, and go. But it sounds like people felt that they had to do that even if they didn't want to. Right,
and so this report really brought that to light, highlighted it. Maggie Hickey had wrote in her report that Tim Mapes sort of used his position to pressure his employees, workers, the word that she used to sort of keep things to themselves, or if they had complaints, they felt like they wouldn't be taken seriously by him.
Interesting. I found it interesting. One of the things in the report was that some of the employees said they had very little or no contact with Speaker Madigan himself, so that there was clearly an echelon. And then if you're doing chain of command, well, it was always Mapes because he had so many different roles. That seems a little unusual for a big boss, but I don't know.
Well, it would be unusual for a big boss, but we're not talking about just any boss here. We're talking about Speaker of the House Mike Madigan, who's been around for a very long time. And State House denizens know that even to members of the public, to State House journalists like us and others that hang out around the Capitol regularly, you see Speaker Madigan maybe a few times in a session, if during a year. He has certain appointed times that he'll come out into the public light. If he has to answer certain questions to the press, he'll come out at that time. Otherwise, you don't really see him. And the big takeaway from the report, at least from what I read, is that if Speaker Madigan is not out in the public face and his employees don't know him very well, if they were to come forward with an accusation against somebody else in the office, against a lobbyist, against a lawmaker, that he wouldn't go to bat for them because he wouldn't know who they were, and if they were retaliated against, that would sort of be the end of it for them. And so that's one of the major takeaways and the major criticisms from the report that are specifically directed at Speaker Madigan. You just have to be out in public a little more.
Right. There were some other allegations in there. I guess Lou Lang stepped down from a position of leadership. He's a former state representative, and I'm not exactly sure. I know, he stepped down and said that he had not done anything inappropriate with this lobbyist for, I think, cannabis industry or an advocate. So, the report did not say everybody was terrible, but it went into some allegations. And then Kelly Cassidy claimed that she had been kind of targeted for criticizing the speaker, and I think they Maggie Hickey found that there was not adequate evidence to show that either, despite the fact that people can have problems with their bosses and this and that. Obviously, Charlie Wheeler's not here today, but as he always says when we discuss this, he's a guest very often on this show, and just about retired, transitioning out of the head of the public affairs reporting program at University of Illinois Springfield. He always says, when you talk about harassment, sexual harassment, it's not a single partisan thing. I also heard State Representative Tim Butler say on TV, certainly everybody, both sides, have to deal with a problem like that, and everybody has to be vigilant. So, but the Madigan operation was clearly put under a spotlight. Sam, as you said, he doesn't come out often, but he did speak at the House to answer these allegations a while ago. I do remember when he was fighting with Governor Rod Blagojevich over various things, because Blagojevich hated Madigan almost as much as Rauner did, because Madigan was blocking Blagojevich initiatives that may not have made sense to the Speaker, who wanted his members to be able to get elected the next time. And he, that year, had some press conferences, including one I remember at a Democratic National Convention, like 45 minutes talking to the press, because he wanted to answer everything Blagojevich was saying. So when it serves his purpose, he does talk. Right. And now, he talked with a statement he has to do better. So we'll see where it goes.
I also heard from his chief of staff today that Speaker Madigan also believes the other 3 caucuses should undergo similar investigations, public investigations with public reports issued. So we'll see if anybody else follows in the Speaker's footsteps.
Yeah, if anybody was hoping that a report like this might convince Mike Madigan to leave the position of Speaker or not run next time, I don't think that doesn't appear to be happening at all, and I don't think anybody really expected that, but.
And parts of the report almost view like an acquittal of Madigan directly, at least, again, as far as I read it. You read some of the specific investigations into some of the allegations you were mentioning earlier, Lou Lang, Marianne Loncar being the lobbyist who had accused him, and then Kelly Cassidy. There was some criticism that had been pointed directly at Speaker Madigan, as in, like, this all goes to the top, was all happened under his watch. But the way that Maggie Hickey writes the report, she notes several times that staffers, whether or not they actually interacted with Madigan or not, liked him, that trusted in him. And you read this over and over throughout the report in different contexts, and it sort of, to me, just reads like, sure, Madigan knew these things were going on, but hey, he's a good guy.
Well, interesting. I would just, working around the State House for a number of years, I would say that seeing people work during a legislative session on staff, reporters too, some of the most intense stuff you ever see because of the hours involved. If a legislator decides we're going to introduce 6 amendments today, then staffers stay up all night to get it done by the time session starts the next day. And campaign season, if you watch campaigns and you realize people who work on those too, and a lot of these people are dedicated and probably want to go on campaigns, or some feel they have to, whatever, but those are very intense things too, especially towards the end, because just covering them can be hard, and I've never been on one myself, but they sure look hard. So it's a very intense situation, and certainly that can lead to difficult working conditions, which is why, some campaigns, like for presidential candidates, have started unionizing and stuff, but it's a whole new area, just because it's such a weird game, and such hard work, really, if you want to get this done. Oh well. Speaking of weird, so there was in the suburbs of Chicago, there was a fundraiser, I think it's a little more than a week ago now, with Senator Martin Sandoval, Democrat, who social media picture came out of that event. And apparently I think it was a golf course or a country, and it was a big event and an all-day event, and he had hired people to do entertainment and music, and somebody had a Donald Trump mask, and somebody had like a bottle of some kind of, might have been tequila, but it was in the shape of a gun, and they were pointing it at this person in the Trump mask, and Trump guy looks like he's dying, which makes it look like an assassination attempt on the president. The Republican Party of Illinois is still enraged. Governor Pritzker was enraged. Sandoval said, "I didn't know it happened, but it's terrible," and he blamed it on a vendor. So it is, and everybody said violence in this era of mass shootings is not the thing to advocate in any way whatsoever, and it's a terrible thing. And it does come some weeks after the Republican County Chairmen's Association put out a fake movie poster of the squad, the 4 freshman women that President Trump had attacked, and they were roundly criticized, and they said a staffer put it up, without following the rules. Now it's the Democrats' turn, and Democrats had another problem at that time with a fake KKK hat with, "Make America Hate Again." It's just how can they control this stuff in the age of social media? I don't know.
I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
I'm going to use an old adage, maybe old but new, which is #never-tweet.
That doesn't seem to work from the top on down.
Not
these
necessarily.
days because the bases of both parties use things like Twitter and Instagram to gin themselves up.
But to the degree that we should be tweeting out pictures of what looks like an assassination attempt on the president, even if that's not what was intended, you had mentioned earlier the gun in question was a tequila dispenser. I mean, it didn't look real, at least from the pictures. But even the appearance thereof offers critics and really anybody plenty of criticism to go on for why it is that even appeared on social media from the beginning. Because remember, politics is all appearance. Even the slightest appearance is going to have a bad effect on people like Senator Sandoval.
Yeah. Now, of course, I'm not sure when Sandoval is up for re-election, but it's a very Democratic district. But the Republicans, put out a fundraising email saying, help us defeat Senator Sandoval and demand that he resign. Not sure either will happen, but again, the parties use gaffes of the other party to their advantage. On the other hand, it would be nice if everybody just settled down, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. So there we go. On to something which is other than the political or just workplace stuff. Other workplaces have been unfortunately impacted in this past week as Vistra, which is an energy company that bought some coal plants from another company, which we'll think of in a minute, in the last couple of years, announced that they were closing, was it Exelon? Well, that they're closing 4 plants in Coffeen, Havana, Canton, and Hennepin. A loss of about 300 jobs. In Coffeen, which is in Montgomery County, it's 95 jobs. And Havana in Mason County at 75 jobs. Basically, Illinois is transitioning, as is the rest of the country, to more clean forms of energy. And this is a jolt to these communities, even though even when Vistra bought these plants, I think it was known that some would have to close over a period of time. And it's just kind of an unfortunate move forward. Again, a jolt to those communities. So I don't know where we go from here, but there is legislation that the company is hoping to get passed that would convert at least some of those areas to solar farms or whatever, but again, that might take some kind of incentive that they may or may not get from the legislature. So it's an ongoing problem of the changing dynamic of energy use.
And anybody that drives up and down an Illinois interstate can see while coal plants may be on the decline, other industries like wind have been growing for some time. There are new wind farms being built all over the place just about all the time. And those that have already been established are getting replaced or refurbished, and that's creating jobs in the energy sector elsewhere. Rebecca had mentioned before the program that there are other industries, other small industrial plants around the state that are closing. The Del Monte plant in Mendota, Illinois, which is actually near my hometown, has supplied several hundred jobs in agriculture and canning and things like that. And now, whether that be the trade war, whether that be lower commodity prices, all sorts of different things.
Or just consolidation within the company. What's your hometown?
Pawpaw, Illinois.
Pawpaw. We've seen
which
it
is why I mentioned the wind farms.
I-39. There you go. Yeah.
So the question that I think remains as far as Vistra's closing of these plants is there a definitive plan to convert those jobs into something else? Are these people going to be permanently thrown out of work, and depending on how old they are and whether or not they've got additional educational experience in something else, are they going to be able to move to something else? That should be question number one if the state legislature is going to take up any specific meaningful proposal on it.
And I know the Governor Pritzker's office, said we're going to do everything we can to help people transition and move on to the next thing. And I know there was a meeting of employees near one of these plants, Coffeen, I believe, because Senator Menard was there, and said there was somebody from the company. At least they showed up. They were talking about it, and discussing what the next step in the phase out will be like. So at least there's discussion. And he also mentioned that most people in the community knew this was probably coming because it's kind of been on the boards for a while, and the company actually, I guess, requested certain rules from the Pollution Control Board, which allow them to close these four plants first. So. It's just an unfortunate reality of change. Those of us in the newspaper business are aware of things like this.
Unfortunately.
What's that internet thing? Anyway, we're on it, sj-r.com. Anyway, on to something else. Governor Pritzker actually got on a conference call this year with officials of Planned Parenthood nationwide to reinforce what Planned Parenthood is doing and what Illinois is trying to do to help. That organization is refusing Title X federal money, which helps fund these health clinics, because the new federal rule is you can't even tell a client or a patient where they can get abortion services. So Governor Pritzker has already said Illinois is going to help fill the funding gap and make sure that goes that federal law doesn't have to apply to these clinics, which serve so many people. Rebecca, I think you know about this stuff.
Yeah, so Illinois, there are 3 family planning grantees in the state. One of them is Planned Parenthood. They're not taking their money, $3.5 million. One of them is Aunt Martha's. They're declining $500,000. And one of them is the state's Department of Public Health. They're declining $3.75 million because they've already taken $250,000. Mm-hmm. Not going to spare you the details. The state is basically making up that $3.75 million with state funding. So they're kind of shifting around some money that they've already allocated to the Department of Public Health. $2.4 million of that is going to the 72 clinics that the state oversees. And then the other third, I think it's like 1-some odd million is going to administrative overhead. So like personnel, travel expenses, condoms, that kind of stuff.
So basically, the governor's saying if clinics in Illinois are serving women, the staff there should be able to tell them everything, all of their options instead of just some of their options.
Yeah, Governor Pritzker, basically following the signing of the Reproductive Health Act, is saying, why after doing that should we then turn around and not even mention abortion as an option to women? Basically, if a woman walks into a clinic that had accepted the Title X money and she said, I think I want to pursue an abortion, but I don't know. Can you tell me how that works or give me some details? If the clinic had accepted the Title X money, that physician could not talk about abortion, give any details, could not give paperwork, just nothing. And Planned Parenthood and Aunt Martha's and the Department of Public Health all decided that is not an acceptable way to go, so they're turned down the money.
Interesting. Where does Aunt Martha's operate? Is that mostly Chicago area? Or
I'm not really sure. They don't have quite as many clinics as the other two.
Right, okay. Because I've only heard of them recently as part of this discussion.
Yeah, they've stayed pretty quiet. I've reached out to them a number of times, and they haven't really been interested in the publicity, I suppose. Okay,
the governor also signed a bill this week separately. That was just saying where the state is on that abortion issue, because he signed legislation earlier to make sure that Illinois, unlike many states, is very open to what he calls, full range of women's health, and what people who don't like abortion say is, including public funding of abortion and all that. Anyway, one bill he did sign this week was a Tenant Protection Act, saying landlords cannot evict or retaliate against tenants because of their immigration status. And obviously a bigger issue in some towns than others, but Central Illinois has, it basically says to a landlord, you can't threaten to evict somebody or take action, by saying, hey, I'm going to turn you in, if you're not a legal resident or whatever. Mm-hmm. So
that the critics of that were targeting folks who may happen to be in the country illegally, undocumented immigrants. But the way I read the bill's language is it also involves those who have legal paperwork, who are, whether they're temporary citizens, permanent residents, other things like that. And the fear that is really, really percolating in the country is ICE may come to my door, they may knock on the door, and they might—
immigration agents.
Yeah, Immigration Customs Enforcement may come and knock on my door and deport me because the Trump administration is looking for any excuse to throw people who are undocumented back to the countries wherever they came from. This at least gives some legal recourse to a tenant who's being unfairly targeted by their landlord. They can take them to court, and in some cases, a judge can even impose up to a $2,000 fine
on the landlord for using intimidation based on immigration status.
Instance. So say your landlord intimidated you at the 1st and the 15th of the month, now you get 2 fines. It's interesting to note, too, that Illinois is the only other state in the union that is doing this right now. California is the other one.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Well, Governor Pritzker keeps saying Illinois is a welcoming state. Clearly, though, President Trump has a very different message. People who like President Trump have a very different message, but Pritzker is not shy about setting himself apart and saying we're welcoming to all of our residents, which could be seen as controversial, but he is very clear on where he's at. And there you go. So very interesting. Speaking of Governor Pritzker, now he does live in the mansion when he's in Springfield. There is living space within. I guess it's, if not the largest, one of the largest governor's mansions in the country. But new security rules were announced this last week. My wife and I went on a tour of the mansion over Christmas break. It was very nice. There was somebody, I believe, from the Department of Natural Resources showing us around. It's been open, I think it's 1 to 4 every afternoon, 7 days a week. Now, starting, I believe it's September 3rd, you're going to have to sign up in advance, even individuals, at least 48 hours on computer. Tours certainly have to sign up in advance. I think some do now. There's going to be metal detectors, and you're going to have to show a picture ID when you go in. So it's, and this was brought on by Brendan Kelly, the state police director, said in the announcement, we checked with governor's mansions across the country. We were lax in security. So it's just another unfortunate reminder that things in Illinois are catching up to the bad things happening across the country.
I mean,
have
honestly,
you been through the mansion, by the way? Either of
sure
you?
have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both of us have been. Yeah.
And I mean, you really could just walk right in and go on your tour. And I don't recall having to show a photo ID or anything.
Nothing like
I don't
that.
recall having given them my name. So, I mean, hey, if it keeps the building safer.
They're sparing no expense, to quote the old line.
Right. So another thing the governor signed this week, and I know, Sam, you were at it, $40,000 over a period of time, I think by 2023, $40,000 minimum salary for public school teachers in Illinois. Right now, I guess, I don't think anybody makes this, but it's not been changed since it was set at $10,000.
Right.
Governor had a wide array of teachers' unions there, Illinois Education Association, Illinois Federation of Teachers, legislators who were for this. Katie Stewart is a former teacher from Southern Illinois. She was the House sponsor. Andy Menard was the Senate sponsor, but he was with the electrical or the power plant workers instead of being at the State House for that event. But the governor was quite proud to say we have a teacher shortage, and this is a way to help show people they can go into teaching and make a reasonable wage for that work.
And it's been something that State House folks have tried to get passed for a while now. Governor Rauner had vetoed a previous bill under the guise of, well, this is an unfunded mandate. There's your 10-cent word for the day, unfunded mandate. Mm-hmm. Boy,
yeah, but school district people sure know that one.
Right, of course.
They don't want the state telling them what to do without paying for it.
And the former governor had asserted that in mandating a certain minimum teacher salary would take away local control from school districts. And of course, school districts want as much control over their operations as possible, especially because school districts shoulder the burden of school funds, of
property taxes.
Right, via property taxes. Now, the evidence-based school funding formula that state lawmakers passed a few years ago is supposed to be changing that.
Right. And the governor said more state money is on the way.
On the way, right. But by our count, the governor, the state lawmakers only put in $375 million more. $350 million was already required by the evidence-based school funding formula, and then they managed to find an additional $25 million. That seems like a lot, but spread out over 800 plus districts, maybe not so much. It's also probably important to note, too, that the State Board of Education says that the average teacher salary is well over $65,000. Now, we're talking about a lot of different types of teachers. We're talking about teachers who've been teaching 15, 20 years.
Right. And the governor, it actually was a little bit surprising. The governor said there's, I think, like 130 or 150,000 teachers in the state, and they thought about 8,000 were making below, kind of the limits that are going to be set in this bill.
A small fraction, but that's still 8,000 people who are under what may soon be the statutory limit.
Right.
One of the young teachers there had said, we want to make sure that we and our families can live secure while teaching these students, while living out our passion, which is teaching.
Interesting. Well, we know that Governor Pritzker is a man of means. He is the quote-unquote billionaire we've heard of. And something just happened in Chicago that I thought was kind of interesting. The James R. Thompson Center in Chicago, that spaceship-looking building right downtown near Chicago City Hall, the green glass one. The governor spent $275,000 of his own money to spruce up his office, saying it is worthwhile for people visiting the governor's office to get a good first impression. Now, the offices down the hall apparently are still lousy, but Rebecca, that's just, I guess that's a advantage of having a governor with means who can just get some stuff done without going through an elaborate process. And I don't know if you've ever been in that building, but I guess the employees complain quite a bit about the smells and the rust and apparently some cockroaches by the Sun-Times story.
Yep. Yeah, and his spokesperson had said that the office was in a very sad state of repair, and it was embarrassing. So he fixed it.
We fixed that for now. And with that, we'll fix this for today. Rebecca Anzel, Sam Dunklau, thank you for your help. I'm Bernie Schoenburg. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.